Alright, so today's project we're going to be swapping fuel injectors in a B-Series Honda engine. So as you can tell, there's some painter's tape on here just labeling which cylinder the corresponding connector goes to. So this way you don't mix up any of your injector connectors. With a semi-tucked harness like this that I put together, it's possible to mix them up, so you always want to label things first. Just in case. Next thing is you want to prepare for any fuel spillage. So typically it'll be just what's in the fuel rail itself. I'm also going to release pressure from the fuel system itself. But having this guy underneath, I'm going to pull him out a little bit further too, is going to be very helpful in terms of catching any fuel, because then you can just simply take that guy and put him in a safe location once he soaks up some of the fuel that may spill out during this process. You always want to be safe when working around fuel, have a fire extinguisher nearby, just in case. You really never know, and better be safe than sorry. So, as you can tell, there's some little clips here, and that's what's going to hold the head of this injector connector to the injector itself. So we're going to be removing these clips, not necessarily all the way, but they have a little notch where they go forward, and then that loosens them up so you can kind of pull straight up and pull them off. We'll undo those first, just because it's easier to work on them while it's still in the rail. My catch can breather fittings, I've already loosened these, so these are just going to get pulled over, put to the side as so. And we can disconnect this guy just to kind of give us a little bit more room. I've got a custom fuel filter bracket that I fabricated, so I'm going to be removing that to get that out of the way, because eventually this whole unit here is just going to be able to lift up, and we'll be able to pop the injectors out and put new ones in. Another quick tip is, what's suggested is anytime you install injectors, you always want to put new injector O-rings in. For Hondas, the O-rings typically reside at the top of the injector, and it prevents that chance of, say when you had removed it in the past and put it back in, if any of the O-rings were compromised, that could be a pretty serious issue. So you always want to replace them with a new set, just in case there was a slice or sliver taken out of any of the old ones when you were removing it or putting it into the rail. Even if you didn't have issues beforehand, it's just, a best practice. So, without further ado, I'm going to get some of these bolts loosened up. Basically, we'll get the clips undone. I'll try to get a shot of how that goes. We're going to undo the 3 bolts that are holding the fuel rail to the intake manifold. I'm going to take out my custom bracket here. And then realistically at that point, this unit should be okay to lift up. And then we'll install the new injectors. So until further ado, I'm going to pause the video and we'll continue on once I'm ready for the next step. Alright, so I figured this angle was actually good for the video to see the injector clip removal. So basically what I do is I'll take like a pick and I'll kind of get in between a little bit, and at the same time you can use an additional pick and kind of go a little bit forward almost, put some pressure on it, and as you can see, one side is loosened there. We're going to do the same thing to the other side as well. Okay, so we remove the clip on that one. Of course, it got a little bit further away from us than we anticipated, but that's where the magic of magnets come into play. So I can see that unit right here. Here we go, we'll put him in focus. And he's easy enough to put back on. Just make sure you got it in the right orientation as far as which it originally came on. More or less, you can kind of just sit it like that, and that'll stay on there until you're ready to completely remove it. So at that point, just a little wiggle and we're up, and then the unit is off. Alright, our fuel rail is now loose, as you can tell. You see some of the heads of the injectors and the little green O-rings I was talking about earlier. in regards to replacing those whenever you do an injector swap. So, really easy from here. We're just going to pop the fuel rail off a little bit further. As you can tell, we're completely free. The injectors themselves come out fairly easily in most instances. Take a look at this guy over here. That's the O-ring that we want to replace. Bottom, the pintle cap. These are just for reference in case you're curious. These are factory 240cc injectors. And it's 440cc injectors that they're getting replaced with. So, yeah, one thing to note in regards to this is if you're going to upgrade your fuel injectors to a larger size, make sure you have engine management that can also, coincide and be tuned with those injectors. They're not going to work well just as is. I believe there's like from what I've, heard through the years, is there's roughly like a 25% increase you can go do on a stock ECU, and it'll adjust the fuel trim appropriately. But, if you're going to upgrade, engine management is kind of key there too. So, basically, there's new O-rings in this guy. Just kind of can see them there. Just had them in there so they're protected. And then basically they just slip over the top. You're going to add, typically to get them in, it all depends on the machining of your fuel reel, how loose it is, or how tight it is. You may need to add a slight drop of oil on the O-rings. And these were installed before, so I could probably actually show you one of the reasons why you might want to do it. I don't know if you can tell from this picture, or from this video rather, but they're a little flattened on the sides. So installing new ones is going to, bring back the original diameter. Of course, eventually they'll probably flatten out a little bit, but this is one of those maintenance items where, again, whenever you're pulling them, replace them. They're cheap enough. You spend a couple bucks, maybe $10 or something if you go to the dealer, and it's worth it for the peace of mind. All right, so we're going to be swapping those in next, and then we should be good to go. Okay, so should be able to see the fuel injector here, and what I'm going to be doing is just using my fingernail to remove this O-ring. And we're going to take our pack of brand new ones. Always inspect them, make sure you don't see any slices or slivers or anything of that sort. And then they're pretty easy to put on. You can kind of get an idea. And then lastly, what I'll typically do is I'll just take an open bottle of oil that I have laying around. Let's flip the lid. Unscrew the cap. See, my cap has some film in it here. This happens to be royal purple. So we'll just take a tiny bit on our finger and put it around the side of the O-ring to help with installation. Now the key here is that you put the injector into the fuel rail first. And the reason why you typically want to do that is because since this side has an O-ring and this side has more or less like a donut gasket that it sits in, you don't want to take the chance if all four of these are sitting in your intake manifold. You don't want to take a chance of when you sit the fuel rail on, trying to get all four to match up at the same time, that you potentially take a little slice off the O-ring or something to that. So, as far as I've learned, it's always wiser to put it on the fuel rail first, and then take that section and put it into the intake manifold, into the little donut gaskets. So that'll be the next part. But as you can see, it's all in the O-rings, piece of cake. As you can tell, I've got all the fuel injectors installed into the rail. And now we want to make sure all our wiring is out of the way. As you can see, the fuel injectors are in there just from the pressure of that O-ring. So you can get a rough idea of how well that O-ring seals. We want to kind of bring our wiring over. how we had it before. This way it's more or less out of the way. And then roughly walk these guys into their home. So that seems pretty good. Usually you want to give it a little bit of a kiss inwards there. And then basically once you're sure that everything's all even, you want to reinstall your fuel rail hardware and then clip your injectors back in. So always make sure the injector wiring is free from when you bolt down the fuel rail. You don't want any mistakes of crushing the wires and then having to repair them or replace the pigtail. And other than that, that's really it. That concludes a injector swap or install if you happen to have a bad one. Hope this helped. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you got any questions, just leave one below. Thanks.